Welcome to Montrose Makerspace today. It's February 20th, 2015. It's been a while since I've done one of these, about 10 days. I was in Mexico last week, making a trip to visit some people that I know in Los Alamos, mainly my mother and my sister. And then I went to Albuquerque for a business trip, and I gave a presentation on last Friday, and we'll talk a little bit about that. I guess we'll go ahead and talk about that now. So remember last week, hold on, let me get some. So I think the last time I was on, I was talking about this thing. This is the Solome briefcase that carries a circuit inside, and you can go look at the last Makerspace today and kind of hear about how this got fabricated in the Makerspace. I presented this to the testing lab in Albuquerque on Friday, and it turns out that that in and of itself is a good idea for a product, but in terms of really having something that they would use, they would like it to be about this size. So it turns out that circuit that's inside of there can be productized into 4 circuits. There's the Solome monitor, which monitors power and voltage and current out of a solar panel. Then there's the sweep product, which is what this is, and it disconnects the panel from the load and does a sweep. That one in the briefcase there it's called the load, which is an electronic load. And then the final product is called the Solome inverter, the microinverter. So they've requested that I continue on my development and take the board and shrink it down to this size and only do the sweeping, and that's something that they would actually be more excited about, and there'd be sales volume there. So I'm going to continue working on that. And I'll talk a little bit more about a trip to a garage sale that I went to in Los Alamos. Very interesting there. And so I basically didn't do a lot of Makerspace stuff last week. That didn't stop Kern and Susan and the rest of the Makerspace team from continue on in our journey to opening the doors. Kern really concentrated on business development and talking to all these entrepreneurs that want to start doing their development at the Makerspace. And he wrote me something about, I don't know, maybe Thursday, and said, okay, we're up to 20 product ideas right now, which is quite a lot for us not even being open yet. And these are legitimate products that we want to prototype as well as manufacture there. Well, one of them we may not be able to manufacture, because if they get an order from a large outdoor outfitter, the outfitter may want 100 to 150,000 units a year. That might exceed our capabilities on our little Makerspace. Let me see. So I came back on Sunday, and I took Monday off. I actually went back to work, and I cleaned up a lot of things in my truck and responded to a bunch of email that I put off for a week, got all that straightened out, and put some billable hours in for another customer. So that was Monday. Tuesday, we started back up again with the Makerspace. Chuck and Bill and I went over to the Montrose High School to participate in a fabrication review for the Montrose High School Project Lead the Way PAX Public Art Experience project that's at the Makerspace. And we reviewed there's 20 different projects that involve making the letters of MontroseMakerspace.com. And we reviewed as a fabrication review. So they brought in all their materials, and we talked about how they were going to fabricate their design. Remember, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, we went through a design review where they just pitched their idea on paper. Well, this time they actually had their materials that they were going to fabricate out of. And it was very interesting what the students over there actually had found, particularly the recycled items. One group that's working on the O brought in the clutch plates. Clutch plates. Did I say that right? Clutch plates. Whatever. The round discs that are in a clutch plates. And they actually, if they dangle them and have them bang into each other, it's pretty nice wind chimes. So that was good. That was in the morning. We took 2 classes in the morning from about 9:30 up to 11:30. Then Chuck and I went to lunch. And we talked about his progress with the school districts here in town, not beyond the public school, and his outreach in letting the, administration people in some of these other outlying schools to that there's a makerspace and we have a really big education component. So he's been working on that. I also ran into Dennis from Abrams, and there's been progress. There's always progress on the CoSpace here in town. So I wanted to find out how that was going, and he said it was going well. So that's good. That's good that they're making progress on the CoSpace side. Then Chuck and I went back to the high school and did one more class this afternoon. So we covered about 75 students with about 20 different projects. While I was gone, the MOU is ready to sign, so I'm going to sign that with the city of Montrose. We're having a board meeting next week, so I looked up. We're doing the executive team, which is Susan and Kern and myself are having a meeting tomorrow for a pre-board meeting, planning meeting. Yeah, well, you understand what it is. We're planning for the board meeting, and so I printed out. Well, I opened up the 120-day action list that originated on December 4th when we presented the introduction to the Makerspace meeting to the city of Montrose, the county, Region 10, and that meeting that happened then. And I looked at the 120-day plan. I brought it up as a PDF document, and I looked it over, and well, I really need to print it. So remember, if you actually watch these things, my printer died about 3 weeks ago. And what was going on was you'd click it on and the LED lights would blink on and off, blink on and off. So that indicates a power supply problem. So I just went and dug an old printer out, and I've been using an old USB printer for quite some time. So tonight, instead of using that printer, I decided let's just tear open the printer that I have and see if I suspected there's a capacitor problem. And sure enough, there was. So I'm going to show you what's going on with that. And a lot of electronics that were manufactured probably between 15 and 12 years ago, there's a manufacturer that made a bunch of faulty capacitors, and there's billions of these capacitors out there, and this has been a known problem for quite some time. I'll show you what I found. I basically replaced this little guy right here, and the printer started working again. So let me show you what a bad cap looks like. If I can get this to work right. There we go. Okay, this is an electrolytic capacitor, and what you want to look for when you want to look for these things is the top of these things are domed out, which means that the internal it's expanded internally to the point where it's actually domed a little bit. And a really bad capacitor, this thing will actually be cracked up here and there'll be goo coming out of there. That's an indication of a bad capacitor. So all I did was I looked around the power supply board, and I found this guy, pulled it out and put another one in and turned the printer on, and we were back in business. So if you have anything that kind of looks like it's bad, just take it apart and look for these big electrolytic capacitors, and chances are, well, it may be. I've had a lot of different motherboards and video cards and all sorts of different electronics have these bad capacitors, and I just pulled them out and put new ones in. So that was a fix, and that printer only has 3,000 pages on it. So I didn't want to pitch it. I mean, it's been a great printer. So I printed out the 120-day action plan, and I looked it over, and we're actually doing really well for this. I went on Google, and I found out that 120 days from December 4th is April 3rd, and we're at April 10th now, or February 10th. So we have almost 2 more months of activities to go to finish off this plan. And we really just have to create our operational policies, develop membership, developed membership and sponsorship agreements, which we're in the process of. We got our bylaws. We applied for nonprofit. We have an executive director. We're working on a lease. We secured commitment for semester classes there at the Makerspace. We're developing equipment use, and we're working on the improvements to the facility, mainly the stairs up to the lounge. So I would say of all these things here, we're about 80% of the way there. That's really good news. So that's what happened at the Makerspace. Now, there's one more thing I want to tell you about. So I've been going down to Los Alamos. My sister called me at, I don't know, sometime in October. And she said, hey, there's really a good yard sale going on down here. There's a guy selling tubes, and I've been, interested in doing tube stuff for quite some time. I talked about that before. But I've been going to this guy's yard sale, and he basically has, it's an estate sale, and the guy that's helping the widow, Frances, liquidate her husband's estate has been doing this garage sale every weekend for about 6 months. And so I've been down there, it's been about, over the past 3 months, I spent at least 20 hours in this guy's house and garage and shed and storage units and all that kind of stuff. It's really quite a large sale. But the reason why I'm bringing this up here is I came back with a bunch of stuff that's destined for the Makerspace. Potentiometers, some more power supplies, and things like that. And so, an example of something that I could bring back would be something like this. Okay. So this is an old Weston analog meter. And you might ask, why would you ever want one of these? Well, it turns out that these are actually really much better for certain types of electronic work, because it's, if you're using a regular meter, with a digital meter, you really can't see like the rise in voltages. You will see the numbers change, like 7, 15, 27, something like that. But if you look at something like this, you can actually see the rate of change, and that's a really an important thing if you're doing a lot of the diagnostic work. So I have a bunch of these kind of things, panel meters and that kind of stuff. Like here's an example. So I'm doing all this power stuff for solar products. Now look at this baby. This is let me focus in on this guy. Is this gonna work? All right. This guy here is a what the heck is this thing? It is a Weston power meter. I've never even seen something like this. Look at this thing. So you put the current in through these two terminals over here. And then over here you have the voltage side. So you put your voltage in over here. You run your current through here. And this thing, internally using analog circuitry, calculates the power that's going through the circuit here. And for solar panel, microinverter, and development work, you just can't buy anything like this that's anywhere near this kind of quality. And I looked this up on the net. I think this thing is probably about 70 years old. And I ended up getting a lot of this kind of real vintage stuff, this Bakelite kind of junk. The excellent kind of things here. So the thing I went down for was, this guy had a lot of tube electronics, and he had a bunch of tube testers. The liquidator was not going to sell any of the tube testers until all the tubes are gone. Well, that's true now. And he did earmark this baby for me. So look at this thing. This is a Hickok model 605A tube tester. This was actually broken. If you look at, let me see, where's that? Where does it say here? Oh yeah, down here. It says sell for $1 because it was broken. The guy that was liquidating thing, he's a technician, so he went and actually did some debugging work and figured out that this panel meter here had needed some work on it. So he worked on that, and he ended up selling this to me for about $80. I'm going to go through and do a little calibration run on this and be able to test these tubes. So of all the people in town here, there's a gentleman I met at a garage sale. His name is Jerry, and he's always mentioned to him. He said, if you run into a tube tester and you see it, just pick one up. there's two types of tube testers. There's one that just does emissions. This one actually does transconductance. So with this one, you can match tubes, which is really critical for audio amplifiers. So I'm getting a lot of this vintage stuff, and if there's a call for it, I will actually start. I'll teach a class there at the Makerspace about antique radio restoration, which is kind of what I do if I have any spare time. And I've actually done, I don't know, maybe 8. I wonder if I have anything. I don't know. We'll talk about that later. But I've done about 6 different tube amplifier repairs, and it's something that's really interesting to me. So that's really what we got today. We're meeting. Let me see. Tomorrow we're meeting, doing a pre-planning, and then on Thursday, the IT department from the city of Montrose is coming over for a couple hours, and we're going to talk about our needs from an IT perspective. Excuse me. The fiber has been pulled, and we need to go through the termination process to have the fiber be properly terminated and land in our equipment closet. And then we want to talk about the voice over IP phones and the computer systems, as well as the public access point that we're going to put into Makerspace. So this is Montrose Makerspace today for February 20th, 2015.